nerds, I'm Tom. Today we're going to talk about Brew, which is a light to medium weight dice placement game. It's a worker placement game where dice are your workers, whatever you want to call that, with a decent amount of take that going on. So every player has dice. They have some dice in their player color and a couple neutral dice. They roll them, and then we each go around placing one die apiece on little worker placement spots. There is a board in the center of the table where you can place your dice, but that's actually kind of not necessarily where you're going to place them the most. There are cards that are flipped out on the table. They're called forests or something, I think. They're sort of like an area control aspect to the game. So at the end of the round, after we all place all of our dice, whoever has placed the most dice of their color on those cards will win the cards, and the cards can be worth a lot of points. It's actually kind of like the main way to get points. And of course, since there are dice, there's a decent amount of random, right? You're going to roll all these dice, and the faces that are showing are kind of dictating where you can place those dice. Some dice can only be placed specifically if they are this face. There are a couple of spots where you can place, regardless of what face you have. And actually your neutral die have some special abilities. Like they do have some spots on the main board where you have to place them. If you have the flame symbol, you have to place a flame symbol here on your neutral die in order to trigger this ability. However, obviously, if you place a neutral die on one of those cards where you're going for area control, well, that die doesn't count as your die, right? It's not a die of your color, so it can affect the area control aspect. But also, they have special abilities where you can swap out die, or you can use it to cover up another die or something. So those neutral die are pretty cool. But whenever you place your workers, you also gain benefits. Like in addition to the area control aspect of those cards you're placing them on, you're going to be gaining mostly resources that you can spend on potions. Potions are another way to gain points, but they're also the take that aspect of the game. You're going to buy these potions that are going to be worth points whether you play them or not, but you'll immediately put them in your hand, and then once per turn you can play a potion to manipulate the board state, to change your own die, to move dice around, to re-roll stuff, and that's a very big aspect of the game, is this take that aspect. You also have these sidekick characters or familiars, whatever they're called, that you can train. Those will give you special abilities, either constant abilities, or some of them actually have little worker placement spots where you can place your own die on there to trigger a special little thing that only you can trigger. And sometimes those will straight up give you points. Sometimes the worker placement spot will give you points throughout the game. All of those sidekick characters will always give you points, usually really small amount, 1 to 3. I think it's 1 point just for having it, but you have a limit of 3 of those, and if you ever gain a 4th, you will get rid of 1. And actually, if you can get rid of 1, and the color of the sidekick that you're getting rid of matches the color of one of those forest cards that you've won before, you can flip the card over, and hey, instead of being worth 1 point, this sidekick is now worth 3 points, which is kind of minor. That's just an additional way to scoop up points. Is your sidekicks can get you points, the potions can get you a bit more points, but really the meat of the game is those forest cards that you were all going for with the area control with placing our dice. I bet it's possible for a player to not win any of those forest cards and just brew potions like crazy, constantly gaining and spending resources, have a good engine or whatever to get tons and tons of potions, because they are worth points whether they're in your hand or whether you've played them on other players. So there is a little bit of an incentive to do that, but a lot of the reasons why you would want to gather those cards up and play them anyways is to manipulate the board so that you can win those forest cards. I think it's possible for a player to win without winning any of those forest cards, but really unlikely. And there are a couple of other little things with the game, the board will actually flip between rounds, which sounds a lot cooler than it is. The spots barely change. Everybody has special player powers. I mean, you can play without any special player powers, which I almost never do. And then there are sidekick cards, additional sidekick cards that you can start off with. They're these shiny cards. I think they're a promo pack, so I apologize if I'm talking about something that isn't widely available, but that way every player can have 2 special abilities, which is pretty cool. But all those extra things are just like frosting. They're just sprinkles on top of the cake, which is the meat of the game. Okay, 2 food analogies. The real meat of the game is placing dice in a worker placement style fashion on these cards where you're trying to win them in an area control majority type way with a big take that aspect with the potion cards. That is the best way for me to describe this game, and it's definitely not for everybody because it's so wacky. Because, I mean, you can be watching other players as they're buying their potions, right? But it's so hard to keep all that stuff, in your head. So I'm definitely going to be okay, I'm going to play this potion, which allows me to do this, boom, 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 move this dice over here so I can put this. So now I have have majority on the 8-point card, and I'm just going to cross my fingers because that was my last die I played, but I'm not the last player in the game, which means you still have an opportunity. You got a handful of potions, and oh, yep, you just undid my whole turn. Yep, okay. I understand. I get it. There's nothing I can do about it. And for a lot of players, I'm certain I just turned them off by saying that. But for me, actually, I really had a good time with this game. I know it's silly and wacky, and that's not even really the type of game I generally go for anymore. You know, that's not like my favorite type, but it is a type of game that I have like a sort of a soft spot for. It's kind of how I started playing games, like with Munchkin and things like that, you know, very wacky, silly, like Cutthroat Caverns. I like that one a lot. Very... You know, you're playing the players, not the game, and it's kind of crazy. It's a beer and pretzel style. I mean, there definitely is strategy of playing the hand you're dealt, and there is a decent amount of mitigating the luck, especially with the die rolls and stuff, with your special abilities and the potions and the sidekicks that you can get and all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, you'll feel like you played a semi-strategic game, but if you lost, you can just claim, I lost because of a bunch of random bullshit. But you still had a good time. You're saying that with a smile on your face. At least I definitely was. I know I played a 4-player game where I was the one who enjoyed the game by far. Everybody else was kind of on it. Even one guy was like, oh man, I kind of don't want to play that again. And then I played a 3-player game where all 3 of us had a great time. Everybody loved it. So it really is just up to the individual. I also think the components of this game are pretty great. I do think the tokens are a little small, and the insert isn't great. Like, I just have all those tokens just dumped in one big well. It seems kind of funky. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to get rid of that insert. But the dice look really great. The art kind of looks like if Rick and Morty and Pokemon had a baby, you know? I mean, I overall have a lot of good things to say about this game, but the biggest caveat is just if it's not the category of game you enjoy, then there's not really much I can do about it. If what I was talking about in this video sounds interesting to you, I am going to put a purchase link to this game in the description box down below. Go ahead and get yourself a copy, and while you're down there, don't forget to check out our link for Game Toppers. They're our sponsor for Neverboard Gaming. They're awesome. We love them. Also down there is going to be a button that says subscribe. If you subscribe to our channel, then you'll never be bored.